Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're going to talk about the U.S. empire, and we're going to talk about how the villainous vassals, particularly Ukraine and Israel, reflect the reality of the U.S. empire. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. It's Monday night, and I am the luckiest man in the world. And I really I feel like that. I get to hang out with my friends here on the various platforms, social media, all kinds of stuff like that. So I feel very fortunate. I'm a person that likes to run my mouth anyway. I like to talk. So if you know my friends, they'll say, yeah. When you watch a YouTube show with Garland, that's pretty much the same as talking to him on the phone. People are like, yes, Garland, you speak in like normal you just say normal words. And I'm like, because it's just like I'm talking to my friends on the phone or, hanging out, rapping, with friends and talking. It's all the same to me. I got something to say. And, I like to say it. So let's get going. We're back to talk about something. One of the things that I say, a recurrent theme, shall we say, that I've used over the course of time, I'll make this brief. For those who haven't heard me talk about this, I'll just give you a brief summary of it, right? When I was a salesman, I was a really good salesman. I was a good salesman. In fact, the company that I worked for, I was the 8th best salesman in the nation at one point. Why? And that's not blowing my own horn. It wasn't because I was smarter and harder working and everything. It's because I studied a lot and read books, and I learned how to be a good salesman. It wasn't something intrinsic in me, other than I'm, an outgoing kind of extroverted kind of person. But I learned. One of the things that I learned, and I read a lot of books. I'm a big reader. I've read a lot on the brain and what have you. And one of the things that I learned that was very, very valuable to me as a salesperson was the fact that everything we do, everything around us, expresses us, right? And so what I mean is this: a person's clothes, the kind of car they drive, the color car they drive, the kind of clothes, the way they wear their hair, all of this stuff expresses them, the way they speak, the words they use, everything. So if I go to your office to try to sell you X, when I go in, what do? I look around. What do I see? Oh, there's a Philly Eagles something there. There's something for the 76ers. This guy's from Philly. I may look to see what college you went to. A lot of people you go, a lot of times I was dealing with businesses, large businesses, et cetera. And there was some, I could look and I could see what college you went, what you had a degree in. All the things around you expressed you. Did you have an office with very little of nothing in it? I knew that you were the kind of person you wanted to get straight to the numbers, straight to the right. So I could look at the things around you and I could tell what kind of person you were. I could a little bit of your background. Was it sparsely decorated? Was it all kinds of stuff everywhere? I could pick up so much from looking at your environment. I can go into your house. And what I learned is you go to somebody's house, you walk in somebody's house, you can learn a lot about that person, right? I'll put it like this. If you're some young guy and you want to meet a nice woman, you meet and you at some point you get close enough to her, you go to her house, or vice versa. You're a woman, you go to the guy's house. Look around at everything around them. I mean, you like them, they like you, whatever. You're developing a relationship. Look around at everything you can see. That's going to tell you about this person. You're learning them. And if you really like them, you can look and see what they like. And maybe that can help you further the relationship or, ingratiate yourself with them and their family. You can see they have pictures of their families all over the place. That's mother or no family pictures. Maybe they got family issues with their family. All of these things. So my point being is the things around you. You look at this person's friends. Right? Do they have a bunch of person that are just hangers on, that hang on? Do they have a bunch of people that think they're the big deal? Do they cling on to some person who's kind of mean and ornery and abusive, but they hang on to all these things, right? They're friends. Everything around you expresses you. And we can look at all of that and read you and understand you, right? Okay, here's my point. I'm saying that about the empire, about the US empire. You want to understand who it is. You want to understand what it is, right? Look at the US empire and look at its friends. And in this instance, empires don't have friends. Remember this. The US empire, as all empires, only see two types of countries: countries that they have conquered and countries that they intend and have a plan to conquer. Nothing else. There ain't nothing else for the US empire. There's countries that it has conquered, and by conquer, generally, what an empire does when it conquers a country is puts military bases in there. And it says the military bases are there to protect you, but they're really there to occupy you. They're really there to keep you at bay. They're really there to keep you, they can run intelligence operations out of that. They can run bribe money through that. Ask the Germans how the US bases are there to look out for them and help them. They're bases of occupation, right? So, if you want to understand the U.S. empire, look at its friends, look at the things about it. You could come to the U.S. and look at the U.S. You're going to see a lot of areas with broken down roads. You're going to see a lot of homeless people. You're going to see expressions of imperialism, of the empire. A country, you're going to say, how does the country have all this money? Well, it's debt now, but at one point it had money, and it's all broken down, and the things are broken down. But I tell you what you can do. Go around the world and go to any of the bases and see how broken down they are. You want to see good infrastructure, go to the Pacific. The U.S. is building a base on an island called the YIP Island. It's so small, it ain't even on the map. They're spending $400 million on the base there, right? Go to that base. You think the infrastructure and the roads look bad? You think there's homeless people laying around? It's going to be pristine. No money, nothing will be spared. The finest electronics, the finest everything, because the empire is spending on the empire. The empire spends on itself unlimited amount of money, on its citizens, on its people. The citizens and the people now are something to be censored, or something to be put down, because they're asking too damn many questions, saying, why is it that I'm paying taxes? Why is it that I live? Why is it I live here and nothing happens for me? Right? So you want to look at the empire and you want to understand what's going on. Look at the people. They're angry. They're furious. They're upset. They're restive. They're like, what the hell's going on here? We're not happy. The empire doesn't care, because it operates for the sake of the empire, for the sake of the ruling elite, not for the citizens. They're to be put down when they start rising up, because they're not getting fair treatment. They ain't get bad news for your citizens. That ain't what happens in an empire. Now, that brings us obviously to what? That brings us to the vassals, the particular vassals of Israel and Ukraine, right? We want to look at them. We want to understand the U.S. empire through the lens of Ukraine and Israel. Now, I can say this: there is another way that is of great interest if you want to understand the empire, right? The other way to do it, before I get into Israel and Ukraine, just to show you that I'm not locked in on only Israel and Ukraine. Shortly, we could talk about Europe, but a way of understanding the empire that not a lot of people do is by going to territories, right? If you want to understand the empire really, really well, go to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is not a state. Go to U.S. Virgin Islands. Go places like that. Go to some of the territories that aren't states and look what's going on there. Look how they're treated. Look how the infrastructure is done. You can learn a lot by looking at the territories of the U.S. It's interesting. You go to Puerto Rico and you've got San Juan, which is a beautiful city. It has some poor areas. You get outside of San Juan, you got a lot of poverty. I talked to a Puerto Rican guy once, and he was like, yeah, when I was in Puerto Rico, and he was like, look, we are below the U.S. We're not allowed to be up to their standards, but we're above the really poor people in South America. We're above their standards. But so they understood that they were second-class citizens. Now you go to the Virgin Islands, they're third-class, fourth, fifth-class citizens. They're everything. The only thing you have, other than the rich people who live on the mountains and the big houses and all that, is most of them are descendants of slaves, and they're all poor. They're all poor. They're treated like crap. They have the servant class jobs, things of that nature, right? You look at the empire, and the empire still. You go to Virgin Islands, you still got kind of an apartheid society there to some extent, not officially, but economic apartheid for sure. So you want to understand the U.S. empire, rather than just go to from state to state and judge it that way. Go to the territories, and then you'll see a different element, a different angle of the empire. Anyway, so let's continue. Just wanted to throw that in there. So that's something people don't talk about a lot. They don't talk about the fact that the U.S. has territories that aren't states, and a bunch of them. A bunch of them. See, we have unofficial vassals, which would be Europe, which would be Japan, South Korea, Canada, right? Those are vassal states. Those are colonies to an extent when they need to be colonies. But then you have the real territories, which that's yours. That's your stepchildren. How's the U.S. treat them like crap? How's the infrastructure like crap? They got some nice bases on some of them, but that's the only place the empire really spends money now is for the military bases, for actual the empire itself. Empire only spends money on imperialism. I think that makes sense. Now, when we talk about and let me add this: the Philippines is just a colony. I mean, did you know that in the Philippines, the U.S. has all of these NGOs, like hundreds, at least 100 NGOs, these so-called non-government organizations, which are really, run through the National Endowment for Democracy and stuff like that. Did you know that when the people in the Philippines vote, they vote for people, right? Which is just like the U.S., you think you're voting. It's the illusion of voting, but the illusion of democracy. Even when they give you the last two, generally, you're choosing between, two people to represent. Which person do you want to represent the ruling elite? But at any rate, in the Philippines, they have like a list of 100 NGOs, and they have to choose 20. It's like in their Congress, Parliament, or what if literally the U.S. run NGOs, which are paid for by the U.S. government, National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, basically CIA cutouts. The people actually have to choose some of them to go in there, like Parliament, Congress kind of thing. So, I mean, come on, for really. But at any rate, so let's look at Ukraine. Let's look at Israel. For starters, what is interesting about Ukraine is both about Ukraine particularly is the unabashed, the pride, the cultural pride in their fascist history, right? And the interesting thing about that is because they've got a fascist history, a history of collaborating with the Nazis, and then post-Nazis, a history of continuing to have a fascist ideology, which became part of the culture. And the U.S., cultivated that ideology, cultivated a fascist ideology. I mean, literally, intentionally, purposely cultivated the fascist ideology. But what's interesting about it is, while the U.S. was cultivating a fascist ideology, at the same time, it had to work hard to hide that from its people, right? And then when this conflict started, and because of alternative media, the people started learning, well, wait a minute, we are supporting people who have a fascist ideology. Then the U.S. had an issue because we're supporting a fascist ideology. And most people think it's just, most people think like this. The U.S. just kind of bit their tongue and did it. I don't really want to support these fascists, but we'll support them because they hate Russia and it's a great tool. That's not it at all. They supported it specifically because it was a fascist ideology, and because the foundation of the U.S. ruling elite, the foundation of the Western ruling elite is fascism. That's the foundation of the ruling elite. It may not necessarily be the fascism of the people. Certainly, there's always been a fascist element in U.S. society, no question about that. But it is the foundation of the ideology of the ruling elite. It is fascism. It is, the rule by the sword, do what we tell you to do, and we lie and we cheat and we steal and we lie to our people, and we must have our citizens think we're the good guys as we support fascist ideologies. I mean, think about if you look at it, let's be honest. Over and over, the United States has overthrown governments. Mohammed Mossadegh in 1953 in Iran. And who they put in? They put in a fascist Shah. Go to, what was it, 72, 73? When they overthrew, Chile? Who they put in? Pinochet. I mean, I could go on, and Somoza, on and on and on. The U.S. installs fascism. It will overthrow a government, whether it's a socialist government or a non-socialist government. It will overthrow a government that doesn't go along with what it wants. And every single time, without fail, they install a fascist. And then they work hard to make sure that their people don't know that he's a fascist. They work up to set it up. Now, the reality is this: the argument that we hear from people who know that the US is installing a fascist is they're doing it because of convenience. You know, they're not really fascist per se. The US isn't really fascist, but out of convenience, because this fascist is easier to control, blah, blah, blah. They could find somebody that isn't a fascist that's a puppet. They install the fascists because the foundational ideology of the ruling elite in the US and the UK in particular has always been fascism. That's who they are. That's so they're going to look for fascists, right? Look, think about this. The US has been in Ukraine. I mean, in the 50s, they were in Ukraine and they were cultivating fascism. And what does the US have to say? The US was sending people there. They were training the Azov battalion, right? They were arming the Azov battalion. They were at one point. The U.S. Congress passed a law that none of the money that was going to Ukraine could go to the Azov battalion because they were neo-Nazis. You think the money wasn't going to them? They were being trained. The Canadians, who also have an affinity for fascism, their ruling elite. Also, there was you could look up any number of articles. They were trained in Azov. You think they didn't know what that Azov patch meant? What do you think they were like? Hey, that's a funny looking patch you got there. It's a little sun thing and this other little forky looking thing. What's that? They knew exactly what it was. That's why they supported them. If they didn't know, look, but think about this. If the U.S. didn't know that these people were fascists, why would Congress have passed a bill that says we can't give these people weapons because they're fascists, because they're neo-Nazis? And then why do you think the U.S. Congress would then rescind that bill and say, okay, and let's not pretend like these members of Congress didn't know that they were giving money to a bunch of neo-Nazis. Of course they did. They voted on the bill that said no, and they still know. AOC, Bernie, all of them still know. Because they were there. Well, maybe not AOC. I don't remember how long she's been there. But the bottom line is this. They're there. Probably, I think AOC has been there long enough. But whatever the case may be, what we're looking at is people who they understood the game. Hey, look, I'm part of the empire. I'm part of the Congress or whatever. I got to support fascism. It is what it is. And deep down inside, they knew that they were working for fascists. How can you not? So they support fascism in Ukraine. And what do they do to Germany? What does Biden do? Launches a horrific terrorist attack. He tells America, green this, green that. I'm here to look out for the environment, et cetera, et cetera. When Germany didn't do what they were told to do, the U.S. said to Germany, look, you got to destroy your economy. And your people are going to have to suffer because we don't like Russia and we don't like you. And by the way, you're going to get a little too big for your britches if you start getting too much money from Russia, and Russia's going to benefit. So you got to stop. And you got to impoverish your people, and you got to industrialize your society. And the German government was going along with it. The people started going to the streets. They started saying, open Nord Stream, and the U.S. blew it. They blew Nord Stream, and they just said, nah, that ain't the way things work here. They were vicious, brutal. That's what fascists do. You either do what I tell you to do, or I'll kill you. You do what I tell you to do, or I'll take some kind of a kinetic action to force you. You don't have a say here. And that's what the U.S. said to Germany, right? A horrific terrorist action. And now they got Ukraine. And what has Ukraine been doing? The U.S. says to the American people, hey, American people, trust me, these people aren't Nazis. And the Ukrainians are like, hey, yes, we are. Shh, no, you're not. Yes, we are. No, you're not. Yes, we are. Right? The U.S. has to argue with the Nazis to tell the American people that they're not Nazis if they're walking around with Hitler uniforms on and swastikas all over the place, proud of it. They're celebrating Bandera, blah, blah, blah. And the U.S. did it specifically because it's like ideologically, Nazis hate Russians. And We need these bastards to sacrifice themselves in an entire country. And we need some really stupid people to do that. So Nazis are really stupid. Well, we'll start there. I mean, let's face it, you're a Nazi. Ain't you're not exactly a genius, right? From start day one, if you've got that kind of a ideology. And that makes them useful political tools. And plus, we kind of like them because our ideologies, aligns with theirs, right? So they get with these Nazis, and at that point, when you're aligned with Nazis, you've jumped the shark, brother. At that point, when you're openly aligning with Nazis, there's no point in trying to pretend you're one of the good guys anymore. And might I add, if you look at the Israeli government, Netanyahu, Smotrich, Ben Gvir, yeah, they don't have on swastikas, but they don't need them because we're talking about an ideology of fascism. Nazis were a particular brand of fascism. People forget that. They say, you're a Nazi. They don't understand that fascism, there's various brands of fascism. There's people who call themselves the left, the right, or whatever, right? Everybody on the right, every conservative's not the same. Libertarians, and then more traditional conservatives, and various different kinds of conservatives, right? Whatever ideology you come up with, there are going to be a continuum of people from extreme to more moderate within the context of that ideology. And then there's going to be purists. I would say the libertarians are purist, right? They're like they have a very interesting pure view of capitalism. If you think about it, it's got some holes in it, some significant holes in it, but they believe it, and that's what they go by, and they are who they are. But they stand for something. They believe in something. Right, wrong. You don't have to agree with it, but they stand for something. They believe in something. And the other thing about libertarians is, and they're not shy. They're not ashamed. They don't have to pretend that they're something they aren't. Same with socialists. Socialists, this is what I am. Like it or not, I'm pushing for socialism. Like it or not, right? You got to respect people, whether you agree with them or not, who believe in what they say to a point where, and they believe in the goodness and the rightness of what they say to a point where not only are they going to espouse their ideological beliefs, they're going to go around and knock on doors. Hello, hey, my name's Garland Nixon. I'm a fill in the blank. I'm a socialist. I'm a libertarian. I'm a whatever the hell I am, right? Anarchist, whatever. And you should be too. And here's why. And they're going to give you pamphlets and they're going to tell you why you blah, 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 because they're proud of it. Now, the brand of fascism that we have, remember I told you there's different kind of fascism. The brand of imperial fascism that the ruling elite has in the U.S. and Britain is a brand that's something different because it's really, really nasty. It's really aligned with the neo-Nazis in a lot of ways, but they have to pretend to be the nice guys because of their population, because the working class, because the culture of the working class in America, for the most part, and in Europe, for the most part, a large portion of it, and enough of them that they could control politics if there was a fair and honest elections. And in these places where democracies, which they're not, because there's too many people would say no. That means the ruling elite have to lie to them, have to mislead them, and they have to attack and censor those who speak up and say there's something wrong here. So they go along with their two evil twins, and all you got to do is look at them. Let's start with Ukraine, right? What we've got is a group of people who hate a particular ethnic group. They feel that they're inferior, but they hate them just because they hate them. They're inferior. They should be killed. They should be wiped out. You had a member of parliament say something in Ukraine, make a statement, and I don't remember it exactly, but it was something like in Crimea, the Ukrainians should just like take 25,000 civilians out and just mow them down, just kill them all, just to make a statement or make a point. That's fascism. That's the way fascism works. That's Ukraine. That's why the Russians knew we can't bargain with these people. They've been down that road before and they lost 30 million people last time. So they knew there was no bargaining with them. They thought they could bargain with their masters. What the Russians didn't know when they were working out, hadn't figured out at that point, when they were working out the Minsk Accords, when they were trying to get deals, when they were handing proposals to the U.S. empire saying, look, we need to work out a deal. They hadn't figured out at that point that the U.S. Ruling elite was supporting these Nazis, not because the Nazis were a valuable political tool, but because they were ideally aligned with fascism, because they were fascists. What they've learned is they're dealing with fascists, that the ruling elite of the US is fascist, and they're just lying to their people and attacking and censoring their people who say, hey, we don't like being ruled by fascists. But that's who they are. That's what they are. All you got to do is look at the two big countries that they've taken under their wing. And the two valuable countries, number one, and that is Ukraine. Number two, Israel. I'm going to put them, no particular reason I'm giving the numbers, but Israel's value, as Joe Biden said, for all the anti-Semitism stuff they talk about. Joe Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we would have to create it to address our interest in the region. That don't sound like he was worried about anti-Semitism, does it? It doesn't worry about. It sound like he was worried about a Jewish homeland, does it? A place for the Jews? Nope, doesn't sound like that. Sounds like this is a valuable political tool for us. Now, you can make an argument over the course of time that the Zionists, and keep in mind something, when I say Zionist, Joe Biden's a Zionist. You ain't got to be a Jew. Zionism and Jewishness is two different things. That the Zionists were able to get so much power that you've got a combination now of the U.S. running Israel and the Zionists within the economic infrastructure of the U.S. Have so much power that if Israel doesn't get what it wants, they can put the squeeze on people, very powerful people here, to get what they want. But the bottom line is this. There's a genocide going on in Israel, and Israel does not have to twist the arms of these fascists to commit a genocide. I mean, if we're honest about it, let's be honest. Let me say what I say before I got about to say this. We got to be honest about this. A lot of Americans don't like to be honest about American history, right? Look, I can do something that everybody else here can do. Every one of you can do this. Every one of us can look back in our life and say we've done some things that probably weren't right. There's people that'll pretend like, no, I'm just good Joe Christian or Muslim or whatever I am, Jew, whatever. I'm a good, person. What you see is a lot of people get like 50 years old. Once they don't have the energy to do the dirtiness that they did when they were young. Now they're in church or whatever, the mosque or whatever all the time. I'm sure lots of people see that. We have members of our family. Right, my dad was a guy, he liked to drive fast. He was a longshoreman, I told you. Drive fast, cursed a lot, drank a little bit of liquor. He was never a heavy drinker, but he drank a little bit of liquor, whatever, right? And my understanding is when he was a young man, he was a bit of a womanizer, all of those things, right? He was a human being. He was, you were a human being. There's other people just like, yeah, sounds like my dad. But bottom, hardworking man, right? But when he got older, he's got in church and all of a sudden he's deacon, and all that stuff. It happens, right? But a lot of people do that when they don't have the energy to go out and do the stuff they used to like to do. They now they're in church telling everybody else or whatever. They became religious in their old age, right? But bottom line is this: I could look at things and say, yeah, when I was younger, I could name all kinds of stuff that I did, when I was younger, and say, yeah, that wasn't right, but that's reality. I'm a human being. I did crap that wasn't right. And the only way that you can be a different person is to come to grips with it. Not say, hey, Garland, remember when you were 20 and you did this and such? I could say, no, I didn't. Never did that. I didn't do that kind of stuff. Wasn't that kind of guy? Yes, I was. I did all kind of crap. And I was that kind of guy. I mean, I think I was basically a good guy, but I was a human being and I did stuff you had no business doing. Who didn't, right? But if somebody came along and said, hey, Garland, look, you remember when you did this or that or such, I wouldn't be like, no, I didn't. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. You shouldn't drive drunk. When I was in my 20s, are you kidding me? Me and my rotten crew, we were drinking brews. I remember me and a buddy of mine, we had an apartment together, right? You young guys in their 20s and we ran women in and out of the apartment all the time, various girls coming in and out. We drank we played cards. Well, yeah, you did with two young guys. I remember we had this big Rubbermaid trash can, right? And at the end of the weekend, it was full of beer because the other guys were coming over. You had to take out this giant Rubbermaid trash can of beer. And you think I never drove drunk? I was drinking beer. I was doing all kind of foolishness, right? All the time. Every week we were hanging out, partying, acting a fool. Yes, guilty as charged. put me away. I did all that stuff. A lot of us did, right? Okay, that's reality. That I'm sorry, I wasn't a saint. Who was? For some reason, when I know why. When people start telling the truth about the history of the U.S. and they say, "Hey, they kind of genocided the Indian, the Native Americans," yeah, they had slaves, not nice at all. After slaves, there was apartheid, lynchings, all kind of terrible things. Not good at all. You could go on and on and on, right? Look, if you're a proud American, you laugh about it, right? You laugh about that. Yeah, that was bad. I feel sorry. Maybe we can put up a plaque and say we shouldn't have done that stuff and promise never to do it again. But we don't do that in America, which is why we still do it. That's why we're supporting Nazis. That's why we're supporting the worst low-life scumbags in the world that are running Israel. Why? Because we never said, look, reality is I did that dirt when I was young, and that's all behind me now. We won't come to grips if somebody starts saying, we did apartheid in America and this and that. Hey, you hate America. Can you imagine if somebody's like, hey, Garland, remember when you were in your 20s and you dated that stripper? And I was like, oh, you just hate me. No, I was 20. I dated more than one stripper. I was out doing stuff that young guys did. Not necessarily saying I'm proud of it, but it was reality. But if I attack the person, how dare you say that about me? Don't you ever say I did anything bad. I did bad, yeah. Right? Not that it's bad to date a stripper, but maybe a lot of them probably not necessarily a good thing. If I gave you the whole context of all of it, it wouldn't quite sound so good, right? But anyway, but you get my point. You get my point, right? If in America you start talking about the real true history of America, there's the so-called people who love America, who got all the flags all over the place, who are the super patriots, will get angry at you. Don't say that you hate America, rather than say that that's reality. And the only way to move forward is to say that's reality. The reason I can talk about that stuff is because I don't drink now. I stopped drinking 20 years ago, right? When I got, old enough to realize, I'll put it like this, probably, I started, getting to a point where I was settling down. I had a child, I had, life. And, I felt like I wanted to be more responsible. I was trying to move somewhere in life and accomplish things. And I couldn't just be out partying, drinking every weekend and acting a fool and womanizing and all that stuff. I had to calm down and get confident and, start to settle in life to do things, right? I did the young man stuff when I was a young man. And I got to a point where still as son of a young man, I had to turn down the volume on the craziness. Some people, like, for instance, Hunter Biden, never learned to turn down the volume on the craziness. But the bottom line is, but I can talk about it. If somebody asks me questions, I laugh. I talk to me and my buddies. We'll laugh about, oh, you believe the crazy shit we used to do? Woo, we shouldn't be here, right? I shouldn't even be alive, right? And how many other people can say that? Most of us. So in any rate, well, the people that don't do that don't take inventory of their past sins, shall we say, are the people that are still doing those past sins. And I honestly argue that one of the reasons that the United States, the super patriots in the US, get angry at those who bring up their past sins are because they ain't passed. And all you got to do is look at Ukraine and look at Israel, and you will understand that they ain't past sins. Because Ukraine and Israel, it's like the right hand and the left hand over here. The right hand is trying to strangle Russia using the tool of Ukraine. The left hand is trying to strangle the Middle East and all the oil using the tool of Israel. And as Joe Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create it, which means they don't give a crap about the Jewish people. Look, let's face it. Western societies, Europe, etc., kind of the home of anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? I mean, the whole concept of Israel is what? The Jewish people have a homeland. Why? Because they ain't safe in my house. Think about it. Isn't that what the U.S. is saying? Isn't that what they're saying in Europe? Hey, we need a safe place for the Jews. Why? Because they ain't safe around us, because we can't stand them. That's really the truth. Hey, we got to get the Jews out of here. Let's find a place for them. If you were so friendly and weren't anti-Semitic and loved the Jews, when somebody said, look, the Jews need a homeland, you say, no, they don't. They're citizens right here. They're just as welcome as everybody else. They don't need a place to stay. They got a place. We love them. They're members of our community. They're members of our society. They don't need a homeland. The concept that they need a homeland is a concept of anti-Semitism. It's a foundational concept that says they're different than us. They're not like us. We don't accept people like them here. And therefore, let's find them someplace the hell out of here and get rid of them. And we'll put them over there. Oh, and by the way, it just so happens that we need some military bases there so we can control the oil. That's the reality of it. The foundation of Zionism is anti-Semitic. It's, we don't want the Jews here. Let's find some place for them. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if, like, I'm sitting here and a neighbor comes on. Hello, Garland. Hey, how you doing? Would you like to move? And I'm like, no, I kind of like my house. We think it would be a good idea for you to move to another community. But I don't want to move to another community. Tell you what we're willing to do. Some of the people in the community have got together and we pitched in, and we're going to buy you another house in another community. We'd like you to move. Well, what if I don't want to move? We're not going to have that talk. We trust that you understand what's going on here, Garland. So here's the money. There's some moving trucks will be here within an hour to load your stuff up and take you to your new free house. Isn't that wonderful? I would suspect that they didn't like me in their neighborhood, and that when they were paying money to help me move, it wasn't because they wanted to look out for me. It was because they wanted me the hell out of their community, and they were going to do what they had to do to get me out of there. Right? And if I found out, say that, Garland, there was a black family that lived in this community before you. Really, what happened? They strung them up, hung them, killed them, burned them alive, and killed them. Really? And now the people in the community have come to me and asked me to leave, haven't they? Yes, they have. Maybe I'll move on, right? If I look at their history, the last black family in this community got hung and burned. And now they're saying to me, hey, Garland, be nice if you move. Probably a good thing, right? So let's revisit Europe again. The Jews were there. They were beaten, pogromed, done dirty, treated like hell. And then finally, in what would be a crescendo of anti-Semitism, the final peak of anti-Semitism was the Nazis trying to wipe them all out. This was not a single thing. This was centuries of anti-Semitism and murder of Jews all coming together, exploding in one big crescendo. That was Nazi Germany. And then after that, the Europeans come along to the Jews. Hey, guys, yeah, look, perhaps you should leave. And a lot of the Jewish people are like, yeah, perhaps we should. It ain't all that safe around. We're doing this because we love you. We're going to bring you a homeland right over there. Would you like some help? Oh, there's some people living there, but trust me, we'll take care of them. They're treating Palestinians like they used to treat the Jews. Wish the Zionists would get that, but they're so single-minded in taking the land that they haven't quite figured out that their best friends are their worst enemies. But at any rate, let me continue. So what we got is Israel. So they threw, basically in a nutshell, they worked to throw the Jews out of the West and put them over there in an area where, let's face it, the Jews had been living for centuries amongst Muslims perfectly peacefully and happily. That was the safest place they could be for centuries, right? And the U.S. put them there in a colonial manner, in an oppressive manner that created a dynamic where the Muslims were now mad at them for obvious reasons. And now they are an expression of the U.S. empire. So now, in the same way that the U.S. empire goes around the world marauding, killing, overthrowing, doing all these terrible things, there is their left hand right there in Israel. They ain't no friends of theirs. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu is like the worst, most corrupt leader that the Israel has ever had. And the U.S., why is he in power? Because the U.S. keeps him in power. They're marching in the street because they don't want him in power. But the U.S. keeps him in power. Is that your friend? You're a guy who is like the worst possible leader that you've ever had, and the only reason he's in power is because the U.S. keeps him in power. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis marching in the street. He's corrupt. He's a criminal. He's terrible. We don't like him. He let him October 7th, and the U.S. is like, yeah, we're keeping him in power for now. We'll get him out of power when we're ready. Because they don't have. Israelis are just like us. They have the illusion of democracy. You got Chuck Schumer saying, and oh, I think it may be time for Netanyahu to go. The leaders of the U.S. saying, we think it may be time for Netanyahu to go. What does that tell the you Israelis? That the empire decides who your leader is, not you, and they don't like you. But the Israelis, because they've got the empire at their back, they think they can do anything they want to. And now the U.S. has done the same thing that it did in Chile, the same thing it did in Indonesia, on and on and on. They have installed a dictator, the same thing that it did in Ukraine. And that is, it facilitated and strengthened and supported a fascist ideology to the point where the fascist elements in that society have spread around, and they are at the top of the leadership. So what we have is, it is a representation of the U.S. empire in the same way that the ruling elite in the U.S. are fundamentally fascists. They have facilitated the rise of fascists, people and leaders in Israel and in Ukraine, so that now they're aligned with the leaders. Now, the problem, they're having some problems with those leaders because, let's face it, there's no honor amongst thieves. Fascists don't get along really well. So now the fascist ruling elite in the U.S. says, great, we got fascists in charge of Israel and Ukraine, and they start doing things that they don't like. And they say to the Israeli fascist leaders, hey, will you stop that? And the Israeli leaders are like, you don't understand that we're fascists, do you? And fascists don't play well with others. We don't take orders from anybody. We're not rational people. We're fascists. Remember, you're the one that built us, created us, and put us in charge. You should know who we are, because we're just like you. Because we believe in our own rules-based international order. So when the U.S. wants to invade Iraq, they say, look, what the UN said, this is international law. We can do it because the UN said they have weapons of mass destruction or something. And then when the U.S. when the UN says, hey, Israel has to stop with its genocide, the U.S. says, oh, that's not international law. What are you talking about? This is just a recommendation. It's not binding. It was binding when the U.S. wanted to invade Iraq or do something that benefited it. When the U.S. doesn't, it's non-binding. And what the Israelis are saying is, we're just like you, dude. Don't hate us. We go by our own rules. And when anything anybody tells us, we just make up new rules. What do we care? We're just like you. Don't hate us. Same thing with the Ukrainians. Now, I don't know if the U.S. empire, if the Imperial Praetorian Guard at the CIA and MI6 were involved in the Crocus attack. Won't shock me the slightest bit if they were, but I don't know if they were. But if it was just the Ukrainians, so what? So what? If the U.S. said to the Ukrainians, let's just say for once, as an intellectual exercise, let's do this. As an intellectual exercise, let's just say that the Ukrainians did the Crocus attack, and the U.S. and MI6 and CIA wasn't involved. And the U.S. calls and say, hey, did you guys do this? Yeah, damn straight we did. Oh my God, you caused us a problem. You shouldn't have done that. You've gone a little too far. You know what the Ukrainians would say? Really? How about how's Nord Stream working these days, dude? What happened with Nord Stream? That wasn't us. It was you. You blew Nord Stream. We watched you. We saw you blow Nord Stream. Remember, we high-fived and laughed. Ha, ha, ha. Isn't it great? Now, all these other terrorist attacks that you were in on, and now all of a sudden you're getting cold feet on this one. Don't hate us, dude. We're you. We're a reflection of you. We're doing terrorism like you do. Don't get mad at us. Don't hate us. So in a way, the fascist leadership of the two countries are getting a little bit out of hand because they're not doing exactly what they're told. But bottom line, you got a pet werewolf. You got a pet mad dog that's frothing at the mouth. If you've got, for instance, you got a pet rattlesnake. If you've got a pet, a buddy of mine's dog, it's a cane corso. He's my boy. That's my boy right there, right? Tobar. He's my buddy. And loves the ground I walk on, and we're tight, right? But let me say this: you better not walk in there because cane corsos are very they're friendly to those who they love and family members. They're, if you're their buddy, you're a buddy. But if somebody new comes in the house or whatever, they don't like that. He'll bite. He'll run at them, do a false charge at him. He'll scare the crap out of him because he's a big dog, very big dog. And I don't know that he would or wouldn't bite anybody. He may. I don't know. He hasn't bitten anybody, but he's scared a lot of people at bark. And when I first met him, I came in and rubbed his little nose and all that kind of stuff. And no, I mean, I put my hand out and he sniffed it and what have you. And then he stood back and every now and then he'd bark at me. And over the course of time, we became friends and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually we're the best of buddies, right? But my point being is you can become friends with a dog like that. But if he's frothing at the mouth and he has rabies, there ain't no way to become friends with him. He's not a rational dog. He's going to bite hey, I got this dog. He'll fix you. Why? Look at him. He's frothing at the mouth and he has rabies. He's not rational. You can't control that dog. And the U.S. has 2 mad dogs frothing at the mouth that have rabies. You know why? Because the ruling elite at the U.S. are mad dogs frothing at the mouth with rabies. And they're trying to have pet rabid dogs. So rabid dogs have pet rabid dogs. It's rabid dogs all the way down. And now they're like, okay, we want you to do this, Ukraine, Israel, we want you to do this. They're like, what part of us being rabid dogs are you shocked about? Dude, no, that ain't what we do. We're like you. They've created an image of themselves. And when the U.S. says, we'll just blow up Nord Stream, and they're watching, their masters, they're like, oh, I like that. That was good one. Blew up Nord Stream. You attacked your enemies. Good work. Okay, I like that. We're fascists. We'll do stuff, that kind of stuff too, right? As they say, my dad had a famous saying, children don't listen, they watch and learn. You can say everything you want to kids, right? But if your kid sees you walking around doing something, acting away, yelling at people, being an asshole all the time, that's what he's going to do. You can tell him don't do it. It don't matter what you tell your child don't do. They're going to watch and learn, and they're going to eventually start to imitate you. And you're going to get mad because you don't like the way your kid's acting, but you won't look in the mirror and say, he's kind of acting like me, ain't he? If you want him to be different, you're going to have to be different. Right? As they say, if you want a world to be loving, there's only one way to get that. Be a loving person. If you want your kids to be a certain way, you're going to have to take inventory of yourself because they're watching you and they're learning how to act from you. They got a model. Don't hate them. Get mad at them. Look at Joe Biden and look at Hunter. His daughter, Ashley, his kids are, I know someone who grew up in that area and knew him. And he's like, yeah, they were all a bunch of cokeheads, screwed up, drugged out, to totally destroyed kids. Look at Joe Biden. Look at this guy. Is it any shock to you that Joe Biden's kids would be all screwed up? He's sniffing children all over the place. God, his father called him pedo Pete. I mean, his son called him pedo Pete. His daughter said he took uncomfortable showers with her when she was a teenager. Something's wrong there, dude. Something's real sick there, right? Well, Israel and Ukraine. So now the Ukrainians watch us blow up Nord Stream, which is an unthinkable, and they see the duplicity. They see us say, oh, we wouldn't do this or that and do the terrible things. They're watching. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're down with that. And they're fascists too. So they're like, I know. The U.S. works with ISIS all the time. We know because we work with ISIS with the U.S. Well, if you work with ISIS, you know who ISIS is and you know what they do, right? You know who they are. You know what they do. As I said, when I was very young, I dated strippers. I had no thoughts that somehow I was dating this girl and she'd never even smile at another guy. That's what she did for a living. And I knew it. I accepted that when I dated. I went through a 5-year or so period where I kind of dated strippers. I understood what I was dealing with. I wasn't dating little Miss Muffet, right? When a woman, like they were all virtually armed. If you ever dated a stripper, which I did, I tell you right now, every one of them has something in their purse or on them at all times to protect themselves. A knife, an ice pick, something, right? You understand that's the game. It is what it is. Don't try to pretend like it's otherwise, right? If you accept living a lifestyle like that, you got to accept everything that comes with it. So the bottom line is this. They look at the U.S., they watch them blow up Nord Stream, they watch them work with ISIS and all of that stuff. I wouldn't even be shocked if I found out that Ukraine did it without the U.S., with CIA or MI6. And what difference would it make if they did or didn't? Tell you the truth, they still work for the U.S. empire. Look, let's say they didn't do it work with the U.S. Isn't the U.S. trying to cover it up? Of course they are. And they can just say, hey, guys, Did you do that? We didn't do it. Did Biden and the people know they did it? Even if the CIA and MI6 wasn't involved, they already know that after it happens, all they got to do is say to the Biden administration, yeah, we didn't do it, wink, wink. And Biden administration said, we got you covered, wink, wink. Because we work with ISIS. We know who they are. We give them weapons. We pay them. We train them. We do all that stuff. We know who these people are. We use them as a political tool. You use them as a political tool. Now, it's a big mistake world internationally because it kind of exposes to the world who you are. It's kind of hard right now for the U.S. empire and the European vassals to hide that they're supporting people who are involved in a horrific murder of innocent civilians, and intentional, wanton, and willful disregard for human life, and just slaughtered men, women, and children. Now, if you look at Israel, is it any reason to be shocked that Ukraine's doing that kind of stuff? In fact, next to Israel, Ukraine's kind of looking like they're the good guys. They're looking like puppies beside Israel right now. They're looking like kind little fair and reasonable gentlemen beside those lunatics that are running Israel, who are just slaughtering people, who are just doing apartheid and unapologetic genocide, you name it. So, additionally, Ukraine and Israel both look at their masters to see what the U.S. does. Yeah, you work with the ISIS, whatever. Okay, so they kind of understand what the rules are, what they can do, and they look at each other, right? Like two kids. Hey, Dad, can I get some ice cream? Nah. Well, you just gave Bobby money to go ice cream. Oh, I did, didn't I? Here to get ice cream. Yeah, here you go. Here's your $5. Go get yours too. They're looking at what the rules for the other kids. That's something that isn't discussed really and should be. Look, anybody who's ever had more than one kids or had a brother or sister, if your sister, brother, whatever gets a new bicycle, you can go ask, hey, Dad, can I get a new bicycle? No. Yeah, well, you gave Billy a new bicycle. And Dad's going to go, yeah, I did, didn't I? What kind of bike you want? Why? Because they know, I did it for one. What am I going to do? This kid's got an old rusty bike. Gave the other one a new bike for his birthday. Tell you what I'll do. When your birthday comes around, I'll get you a new bike too. And the kid will leave him alone. Okay, Dad, I don't care if his birthday's 8 months away. He knows you did it for this one, and he got it for his birthday. And Dad says, hey, yes, I gave him a bike, but it was his birthday. Next birthday, you get a bike. And the kid will go, well, it's 8 months away, but at least I got a bike coming, so I'll work. They're looking at each other. They're looking at the rules. What this kid can get away with, I can get away with. When you give him a toy, you gave him bombs. Yeah, well, I want bombs too. Not fair. Right now, Israel's upset. Ukraine's upset. They're saying, hey, he's the favorite child. How come he's getting all the toys and I'm not getting any? That's the way they're thinking. But they looked at Dad blow the Nord Stream and they said, I can get away with a terrorist attack too. They're looking at Israel over there committing genocide. They're saying, well, I can get away with genocide too. It's been, and the world is looking at the U.S.'s right hand and left hand saying, all right, those are expressions of you. I want to see who you are. And the world is aghast. The global majority is looking, saying, holy crap, we knew you guys were bad, but we thought you'd at least make an effort to hide it. You ain't even trying to hide it anymore. You're just like, hey, here we are. Look at us. We're fascists. And so now I think a major turning point here for the U.S. empire is, number one, everything that Israel's doing. Forget that. That's exposing them. But also, I think you got to put together the two terrorist acts. You got to put together Nord Stream, because that was an attack on a supposed ally, right? And you got to add that with Crocus, because that was another terrorist attack, a major terrorist attack with wanton disregard for human life. And the people on the outside are looking at the U.S. saying, you're so brutal and desperate now. You ain't trying to hide anything anymore. You're just doing it, saying we're doing it because we can do it. And I think one of the things that's happened with the Crocus attack, as more information comes out, as it gets more obvious that the U.S. either was involved, and I don't think it matters, right? I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter if Garland committed the murder. or if Garland committed the murder and he comes to you, and we've had this kind of thing happen in law enforcement, and he says, look, I killed this guy. Yeah, I need some help getting rid of the body. Right? Okay, sure. Let me go get my gloves and my shovel and some plastic and duct tape. We'll roll. I don't want to get blood on my car. I'll take my pickup truck and we'll hose it down afterwards. Where's the body? Oh, I hid it in a dumpster. All right, let's go. Be quiet. Let's all put on black so we can make sure we've got on all black. We'll go there at midnight because it'll be good and dark. Maybe let's wait till 2 or 3 a.m. when nobody's there. You're now masterminding how to get rid of a body. What you're saying is this: I probably wouldn't have killed the guy, but I'm okay with you killing the guy, and I'll be certainly happy helping you get rid of the body, right? You're an accomplice. Okay. Now, what's the US say when, as soon as this happened, as soon as, and Ukraine knew this, boom, there's a horrific terrorist attack, and, hundreds of, over 100 people dead, unknown, innumerable people wounded, terrible, terrible thing, right? And immediately Ukraine knew what the US would do. The US didn't have to know that Ukraine did or didn't do it. Their job was to protect their vassal, their monster, their brutal kid. Hey, there was a terrorist attack in Moscow. Yeah, well, we know Ukraine didn't do it. Well, how they couldn't possibly know Ukraine didn't do it at that point. The investigation was an hour old. The only way they wouldn't know Ukraine did it, they would know Ukraine didn't do it, is if they did it themselves. Ukraine didn't do that. How do you know? Because we did it. It's like somebody, hey, I think Bill killed that guy. Nah, I know Bill didn't kill that guy. Why? Because I killed him myself. So how could Bill kill him? He couldn't be killed twice, right? So the U.S. was, as soon as it happened, what's the U.S. say? Wasn't Ukraine. Who was it? ISIS? Yeah, ISIS. Wasn't Ukraine. Ukraine knew that America would be there for them. They knew they could do it. They knew that was part of the game. They knew that they were dealing with sociopaths. They knew they were dealing with fascists. So fascists do fascist things, and fascists protect their interests. So the U.S. was just immediately like, yeah, what, Ukraine? How do you know? Well, we don't really know. Of course, we don't know. Either we were involved or we weren't involved. It don't matter. We're here to protect Ukraine no matter what they do. I've told people when I was growing up, my mom had a school bus company, and I've learned things, right? One of the things that I learned was that the worst kids, the kids that were always damn in trouble, and I hope there ain't none of you guys on the chat sitting here thinking that's me. You know what I found about the kids that were the trouble kids, right? That were always fighting, always in trouble, screwing with other kids, doing things they shouldn't do on the buses, right? Without fail, when those kids got rode up, the parents came in. It wasn't my kid, not my son. My son would never do that. They weren't even there. They had no idea what their son. Their little son was the worst asshole on the bus. He was insufferable, right? They didn't say my son didn't do it because they knew their son didn't do it. They said my son didn't do it because they instinctively stood up for their son, and they didn't understand the importance of discipline. They didn't understand the importance of making sure that kid did the right thing. Their thing was loyalty. I'm loyal to my son. So when I come in, I don't need to know what happened. I don't need to know what the bus driver says, the other kids said. I don't need the evidence, the principle. You come in, your son was fighting on the bus. No, he wasn't. Your son started. No, my son wouldn't start that. That's not my, I've got a good kid. He didn't say that because his son wouldn't start it and because he had a good kid. He said that because his instinct is to always take up for his kid, not understanding that you're creating a little damn monster. And that's why he's always in trouble. And he knows for a fact that as soon as he does his dirt, and your dad comes in or mom comes in, they're going to say, not my son. My son didn't do that. The ones who said to his son, boy, you better not get in trouble on that bus again. Because if you do, you're going to be in a world of deep and serious trouble. That kid ain't getting in the bus. That was my dad. That was my mom. Oh, Marine Corps General mom. You know what I mean? My mom was not the kind of person to trifle with. She was like, don't make me tell you again. You know what I mean? I grew up with some discipline. My dad just said, do it. You didn't even think about not doing it. Never crossed your mind to say no. Get over here and take up that, do this. Yes, sir. And with my mom, you didn't say yeah. You said, If you said yes, my mother would say, yes, what? Yes, ma'am. That was the way I was raised up, right? So therefore, I didn't get in trouble on the bus because I didn't want to come home and face the people who were not going to be happy, and I wasn't going to be happy. So I didn't get in trouble. The kid that got in trouble was the kid that as soon as he did it, his mom came in and said, not my son, he wouldn't do that. Oh, no, how dare you pick on, I've heard that. How dare you pick on my son? Your kid's a monster. Now, what does Ukraine know? As soon as they do it, hey, we just blew up a bunch of people. Talk to you, Joe Biden. Not Ukraine. They would never do such a thing. Ooh, you. Even if, like I said, most likely the CIA is involved. But even if they weren't, they're always going to stand up for them. Ukraine knows it, and Israel knows it, and they're watching each other. And now what they believe is this: they're the spoiled kid. They're looking at it and saying, we can do anything we want, any way we want, anytime we want. Doesn't matter. And the U.S. is going to stand up for us. And what does that child do? That child represents his parents and exposes his parents as the terrible parents that they are. They're terrible parents. And they at some point, they're having trouble with the kid. And you know what they say? Yeah, I don't understand why my son turned out like that. He got out in the street and those other kids just changed him. We tried our best to raise him. No, you didn't. You didn't provide discipline, and you took up for him when no matter what he did, no matter how bad it was, and now you got that little monster. You created that monster, but you had nothing to do with it. It just happened to me. Hey, what'd you do? I painted this portrait. I had a white canvas and I painted a portrait, and it came out ugly. I had nothing to do with it. You painted that portrait, buddy. And now you want to blame everybody else like it was magic, like the paint fell out of the sky onto that portrait. That ain't the way it works. And the U.S. empire, right? Imagine if from the very beginning, if the U.S. had said to Israel, you're not going to do anything that's wrong, so you're going to have to do it. No, they blew up and murdered and killed and slaughtered people, and the U.S. always backed them, so they knew they could do it because they knew they'd always be backed. Same with Ukraine. They saw the U.S. do their dirt, and the U.S. backed them no matter what dirt they did. They know who it is, and the rest of the world is watching. The people outside are watching, saying, we see who you are really clearly, not just who you are, but who your kids are, who your little Frankenstein monsters are, nothing but trouble, and they're causing trouble for everybody else in the world, and you're sitting back there supporting them, making excuses for them. You're being exposed. You created monsters, and you know who creates monsters? Monsters. Monsters create monsters. And that's what's happening. They've created two monsters, and it's exposing the U.S. And now you don't think people are looking at this saying, I think you guys are behind that crocus thing. And if you ain't, it don't matter whether you are or not, because as soon as it happened, you jumped up and said they didn't do it. And the rest of the world's looking at them like, well, they are kind of goose stepping around with swastikas all over their bodies and pictures of Stefan Bandera on every other freaking billboard. I think they're Nazis. And you're supporting them, arming them, and taking up for them when they do their dirt. Yeah, they probably did it. And it looks like the Russians are going to have plenty of ammo. It looks like they're tracking that stuff down. They're going to get everything. And not only are they going to get all of that, they're going to get a whole lot more. I suspect at some point the Russians will play their hand, that they'll deliver it to the UN, international bodies, etc. What happens if the Russians are able to deliver data, information, hard evidence that the US and the UK were involved in this? After the world came out and said, oh my God, what a terrible thing. Oh my God, look at this. Oh, this is horrible. Because everybody knows, that we've got civilians in our country, this could happen to us. And if the Russians are able to track down the data, see, let me say this. It's one thing if you do it in Afghanistan, if you do it in Syria, if you do it in Lebanon, they don't have the technical and economic wherewithal to figure it out and to chase it down. And besides, even if they did, you'd kill them. The Russians have that. The Russians are very, very powerful, very, very technically advanced, probably more technologically, certainly in military equipment. They're more technologically advanced than the US, and they got friends like China, who are very technologically advanced. And I'm sure the Russians on their own can figure out and chase everything down and track everything down. And what happens if the Ruskies come up with enough evidence that the entire world can see it, and the Russians go, we're going to release this evidence. Here's what we got. Oh, well, I want you to hear some things we got. Let's listen to these audio tapes. What happens when they start releasing all of that stuff? And the U.S. is sitting there caught flat-footed. I think that those days will come. I think the time will come when the Russians are going to release some sensitive data that they have, in the same way that they released the German conversation, because I don't know if they did it. I don't know where they got it from. Where it doesn't matter. They released it. I think the time will come when the Russians will. I think they've got a plan, and I think part of the plan is, and this makes sense to me, that you win the war first. Then after you've won the kinetic war, that's when you make your next move. When you've won the kinetic war and the U.S. is trying to rally against you, oh, we've got blah, 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 we got to do this, the Russians are evil, and you say, oh, we're evil. Huh? We're the evil. We're the bad guys. We're horrible. We're terrible guys, the evil Ruskies. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to release the information that we found on those labs. We're going to release the information that we found on those terrorist attacks. We're going to release the information and they start letting loose the information to the world. That is like the Victoria Nuland conversation that can't be hidden. You can't cheat that stuff. I think the time's going to come. I think they are building up their case. And I think maybe at the end of this war, towards the end of it, they may go to the UN in the same way that South Africa went to the ICC and say, International Court of Justice, we've got a case against the United States, and we're going to put this info in now. Not that they don't think that the ICJ is or ICC, whatever it is, I don't know. Not that they don't think that they're compromised, but you're going to put them in a bad position, because now you put this stuff up and say, well, you got to look at it. You got to make a decision. Incontrovertible. Oh, you want to hear it? We've got all kind of video. We got audio. We got everything you need. Here you go. The U.S. did their dirt. Here's your info. Then what? I think the time's coming that they're building their case and they're going to make their moves. I think that at the end of the war, they're going to have some internal trials for people, and at those trials they're going to release stuff, and they're going to release it publicly. That I think that's what you're going to be looking at, releasing things publicly in those trials. Now, when you get over to Israel, interestingly enough, what we see in Israel is that, we were told the Muslim countries are crazy, they're evil, they're a bunch of madmen, right? But the Muslim countries are the ones that have been pushing for peace the whole time. They've been pushing to stop a genocide. They've been pushing to use international law. And the United States has been fighting against peace, fighting to continue a genocide, fighting against international law. To me, when I look at the Muslim community, when I look at the Muslim nations, they've been acting in a much more responsible manner. They've been acting to turn down the volume, right? They've been acting to decrease the violence. They've been acting in a way that is responsible. And the U.S. empire has been acting like nut freaks and madmen, and so have the Israelis. And I think, again, as the title of this video, it's exposing the U.S. Look, it's not, the U.S. isn't changing. As I said, the super patriots will get mad, but the people who are simply going by the facts and the details and empirical evidence will say, yeah, the United States history is I mean, it's undoubtable, it's unquestionable. I could go through one thing after another. For God's sake, here's a book you might want to read, Conjuring Hitler, right? Read that. The U.S. was involved in the Brits, especially, in creating the Hitler and the Nazi war machine. The Nazis literally said, we kind of looked at the apartheid state of the U.S., I'm paraphrasing, and we said we'd like to have an ethno state, and so they looked at the way the U.S. created minorities and patted themselves after that, and then the U.S. looked at the Nazis. Oh my God, they're terrible. We can't blah blah blah. Only because they got out of hand. They did that so they could get this mad dog and sick it on the Soviet Union, but it was a mad dog. It wasn't a guard dog. It was a mad dog. Guard dogs can be controlled. Mad dogs can't be controlled. And that mad dog got out of hand. And now they got two mad dogs. They can't be controlled. And they're watching you. They've learned what they can do. And you know why? Here's the key to it. Because they realize that the U.S. ruling elite are mad dogs. They realize they're fighting amongst each other. They realize that there's no honor amongst thieves. They realize that they're corrupt. They realize that when Joe Biden says, I want to do this or that, there's somebody in the Pentagon that says, no, let's stop him. There's somebody over here at CIA say we need to go further. That even within the context of the U.S. empire, there's no honor amongst thieves. And they will, if Joe Biden says, I want to do that, if somebody in the CIA says, I don't think he should do it, then they'll work to thwart him. Somebody in Joint Chiefs, I think he should. They'll work to help him. The U.S. empire, there's no compass. There's no true north that they're all going to. There's no moral foundation that the U.S. empire is working on. Even the neocons are fighting amongst themselves. One person wants a little more. We got to attack Russia. No, we got to attack China. No, we got to attack Iran. There ain't no honor amongst thieves. And when you look at the internal fighting in Ukraine, where Zelensky's firing people one day, he's attacking churches. He doesn't want to have, I think they got like 6 TV stations in Ukraine now, and they all play the same thing, which is nothing but propaganda. You think that ain't what Biden doesn't want here? You think he damn near has it now? Okay, our newspapers, damn near the same thing. They got what Ukraine has. We got a handful of newspapers, and all of them are giving us the same propaganda with very little variations in it. What we've got here, though, is we've got an alternative media, and I think the alternative media that we have here is getting the job done. Not to blow my own horn, I'm just one of the people running off at the mouth, but I enjoy it. And here's what I'm going to do. I didn't realize, holy crap, it's getting late. Let's do this. It's been a good hour. I'm going to go to the very tip top. Crap. I'm getting loose-handed here. And I'm going to look through the super chats because we always have good stuff when it comes to super chats. I should have Laith Maroof on tomorrow. I got to do Peter Lavelle's show, Crosstalk, at 9. And okay, then I should have Laith Maroof by about 9:30 in the morning. I was just this morning, like I said, I was out of town. I was tired. I wasn't easy getting up, and I just couldn't do it this morning. All right, WW2 Nazi and Jap Gold used as OSS slush fund for Gladio. Absolutely. Look up Black Eagle Trust and Anderson Trust Company. CIA set up Nazis in Argentina, fascist control. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You need to, there's just so many ways I could go on. Let's just leave that. But yes, good points. We'll leave it at that. That'd be a whole nother video. Dino Panaluca says, it's good to have you back, Garland. Thank you for your great talks. Thank you. Truth above all. Thank you, truth above all. You always have good super chats. How about this? The Sparkster. Hey, Sparkster. Make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Levant Jews got along fine with their neighbors, whether Muslim, Christian, or otherwise. Exactly. How about we go to the old Sparkster? Hitler conspired with the British in the early 30s to move pre-Holocaust Jews to Palestine. Absolutely. How about we go to Sparkster? Says in 1492, the Ottoman Empire sent ships to rescue Jews from the Spanish Inquisition. Makes sense. Yeah, it's obvious what's going on here. You got people saying the Jews need their own homeland. Why? Because we don't want them in ours. That's what it is. People who've always hated Jews, who've killed them and done them terrible, all of a sudden they're like, we're standing up for the Jews. And now they're not. They're like, yes, we've got to stop anti-Semitism. No, they don't. They only got to stop anti-Zionism, which ain't anti-Semitism. Sparkster, Garland, you're the first person I thought of after the Key Bridge disaster. I missed where you said you were going on vacation, so I thought maybe you were yanked out of retirement to help out, or fell over went over the side, huh? New. Let's see. Yeah, Sparky knows I used to do search and rescue on the bay, and I used to teach people to do search and rescue on the bay. So I know a little about taught all that kind of stuff, boat handling and seamanship and towing boats and all the things you do out there for search and rescue, navigating boat with night navigation, navigating by electronics only, you name it, by compasses and waypoints. And oh man, anybody that knows Dead Reckoning, and oh my gosh, anybody know what well, we'll leave that alone. Sparky says, Crocus attack sounds like the work of Victoria Nuland and her Nazi minions. It really does. Security was too tight to carry out the attacks in time to disrupt the Russian presidential election. I think you're right. I think they were involved. I'm just saying, even if they weren't, they were. How's that? Even if they weren't, it don't matter because they're going to support it, and Ukraine knows they can get away with it. But it won't stop. Even if they weren't, if they didn't help commit the murder, they're more than happy to help cover up the murder and hide the bodies. But they probably helped with the murder. So Newland told them to wait until things cooled off, then go for it. By the way, Newland's State Department has their own spooks and affiliates, so it doesn't necessarily need to work with the CIA. Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand. The CIA, the other version of the CIA, believe it or not, is military intelligence. Military intelligence is just a different version of the CIA. A lot of people don't understand the power of military intelligence, naval intelligence, all that stuff. Red Chili Pepper, thank you very much. Let's keep going. Oh. NATO victims. Thank you, NATO victims. All right, now let's look at Rockfin. Is anybody there? Let us move along on Rockfin. JVB. And thanks, JVB. And how about Eleanor Johnson? Thanks a lot. Anna Meyer says, with the pace of the chaos happening everywhere, how do you stay positive? It really feels like the U.S. oligarchy is masks off during its citizens to fight back to make them feel helpless. Yes. How do I stay positive? It's just my nature. I just enjoy life. I look at it like this. I study Zen and I look at it like this. One of these days, my friends, if you can count, I'll have been dead for 1,000 years. Another day, I'll be dead for 1,000,000 years. Another time will come when I've been dead for 1 trillion, 100 trillion, 5 million trillion, 1,000 billion trillion years at some point. So to some extent, if the time comes where Garland Nixon died 1 trillion years ago, did I ever really exist in the first place? Right? And as we say, look, death to me is you go to sleep and don't wake up. But if you really think about it, if you think about when you were born, it was waking up, having never gone to sleep. Right? So when you look at the reality of the odds of you being here are next to zero, it's a miracle that you're here. And I'm just enjoying life on a day-to-day basis in the same way. One of the things that Alan Watts talks about, I'm going way out, but I'll finish it with this. Alan Watts would always talk about this. We're told that life is a journey. You go from here to here to here, like it's linear, like we can understand it. It goes from left to right, from bottom to top, from this point to this point, physically, right? We're given a physical interpretation. We're given physical metaphors of life, right? There's another way many other ways, but here's another way to look at it. Because a trip, I'm going to here, now I'm there, now I'm there, now I'm here, now I'm there. It's a trip like you're going from point A to point B. But what if life is a dance? Why? When you dance, are you dancing to get somewhere? No. Are you dancing because you can't wait till the record ends? Yay, I can't wait till this record ends. If that's the case, the best record would be like 3 seconds long because it'd be like, okay, it's over. Great, I've succeeded, right? We look at success like it's accomplishing something. We've accomplished this. Well, if you think about it, if you've accomplished it, it's already done. Everything you were doing, all the work is over. So now what do? You're done. You're finished. Look what I accomplished. He who dies with the most toys wins. You ever see those bumper stickers? That's all about saying you're living your life in the past, what I accomplished, what I did. Dancing is what? You hear the music, and when I say dance, I mean, you ever listen to a song and you just bop your head because you like the song and you're going like that because you like the song, right? Sounds good. You may be patting your foot on something. Oh man, that's great. You might like Dylan. You might like Sting. You might like the Isley Brothers or Earth, Wind and Fire. You might like anything, right? You're listening to it, you're patting your head. Your body's going to move, right? You're enjoying it at the time. That's life. Life is to be experienced. Life is a dance. Life is to be enjoyed at the time. Because if you think about tomorrow, right? Oh boy, tomorrow I'm going to have a spaghetti dinner with my buddy Joe. Right? And you look forward to that. The problem is if you can't enjoy life at the time, when you're having that spaghetti dinner, you won't be eating the spaghetti, tasting the spaghetti, savoring the taste. Oh, taste a lot of garlic. It's a basil. Ooh, and a little bit of this. And oh, it's a little spicy. I think he's got some red pepper in it or whatever, right? You won't be enjoying that. You won't be enjoying the conversation with your buddy. Oh man, talking about things, having fun. You won't be doing that. You know what you'll be thinking about? What you're going to do the next day. See, if you can't enjoy life in the second that you're in, you can't ever enjoy life because all you have is the second you're in. And even when you make plans, you won't enjoy them because you'll be thinking about what you're going to do next or what you did before. So rather than be worried, oh my God, we're all going to be nuked. Oh my God, the economy's going to crash. This is going to, I don't know. I may drop dead before this is over, but right now I'm having fun doing the video. And so keeping a positive attitude to me is learning to be in the moment and experience what you're experiencing and enjoy what you're enjoying right now. If you can't do that, you can't enjoy life, because that's all you got is right now. And that's how I maintain a positive attitude. Tomorrow ain't promised to me. I was gone on vacation. I got in a plane. That plane could have went down, could have not went down, whatever. Doesn't matter. I was exploring, enjoying the time that I'm in. That's how I maintain a positive attitude. I stay right here. I'm not in tomorrow. I'm not in yesterday. I'm not like, oh God, I remember when this happened. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that was so stupid. Oh my God, what happens tomorrow if fill in the blank? No, I'm enjoying right now. That's how you enjoy life. That's how you keep a positive attitude. Stay in the moment. Come to the point where you realize that that's all you really have. Nothing else exists right now. And by the time you get it out of your mouth, that doesn't even exist right now. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Was it a Boeing? Believe it or not, I've got the flu in my favorite plane. What is that? Airbus 120, A120. Is that what it is? I love that plane, man. I love that Airbus. Oh my God, it's so much better than the Boeings. And that thing's just like I flew JetBlue. And man, those things, man, I think is it the A120? I think it is Airbus. Oh my God. It's fun to fly. Fun to fly. I appreciate the different planes because I used to fly. I didn't fly an airplane. I flew a hovercraft. And you actually fly a hovercraft. It flies. The one I did flew 18 inches above the surface, and I kind of get an appreciation for different kind of hovercrafts, right? That you may fly, and same with planes. And it's just at any rate. All right, thanks a lot, you all. Somebody says they've taken a liking to Jody Brar. Oh my God, I love Jody Brar. She's so awesome. She's one of my favorite guests. Scott Ritter's a great guest. Latham Roos a great guest. The thing about Jody Brar, I love to just ask her questions about anything. And man, she goes on about what the ruling elite are doing and historically what they did and what they said. And you just learn. And I just sit there like this and just learn. She's so much fun. And there's something about Jody Brar, you know what I mean? The way she expresses herself and all her knowledge, her background. She's a great guest. She's fun. She's a very, very genuine person. So yes, our channel, we love Jody Brar. I don't love Jody Brar. You don't love Jody Brar. We all love Jody Brar. She's awesome. And of course, Scott Ritter's great. I mean, I got some great guests. Scott Ritter's awesome. I mean, he's Scott Ritter, for God's sake. Latham Roof. I don't know if you haven't seen any of the shows with Latham Roof, man. That dude, he knows his history. He's really grounded in knowledge. He's got a moral grounding for right and wrong. I mean, what a beautiful guy, Latham Roof's a tremendous person. So we are very fortunate on this channel to have really great people. So tomorrow morning, as I said, got to do Peter Lavelle and Crosstalk. That's always a blast. So I got to do that at 9, and then I should have Lath, and we're good to go. Peace. I'm out. Don't forget, everybody, last but not least, share this on all your social media platforms. Numero uno, share this on all your social media platforms. If you can afford it, you see everything, Patreon, Telegram, buy me a coffee if you can afford it. If you can't, don't worry about it. Simply share this on your social media platforms. Tell your friends, whatever. That's good enough. We got Rockfin. If you can afford to join Rockfin, it's free. If you can afford to be a member on Rockfin, I would appreciate it. It's $14.99 a month. That's steep for some people. If you can't afford it, I understand. If you can, that's great, because Rockfin doesn't do any advertisement. So that's the only way that Rockfin can stay on, by having people who are subscribers to the channel. So you can join there for free. If you can afford to be a subscriber, be a subscriber. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Yeah, everybody loves Jody Brar. She's great. Everybody loves all of them. I'm very fortunate to have some really good guests. Thanks a lot, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. Peace, especially X, because as you probably know, I ain't on X. Peace. I'm out.